So today we're going to jump into the different things that you can write off on your Etsy shop taxes, which you're probably getting a 1099 for, which means that you're self-employed. And there are a lot of interesting, fun things that you may not be aware of that you can actually write off to whittle that cost down. For instance, you may get a 1099 that shows $100,000 in gross sales from Etsy, but there was a few expenses in there that you can take and whittle those things down. And the first one that comes to mind, which is probably the most obvious, is everything in your cost of goods,
Right.
right? So for us, it's fabric and thread and
Pom poms and yeah,
everything
everything.
that goes into
Make
making your product, whatever that is, obviously, and I'm sure you probably know this, but that's the obvious one,
Mhm.
right? Is whatever you're using to put out and put on your product. And I'll back up and start by saying also, this isn't legal advice. We're not CPAs. We're not attorneys. Whatever we say, you need to go back to your CPA or your accountant or your legal attorney, and you need to say, make sure that that is correct for you in your situation,
and your state.
in your state, and all that kind of stuff. We're telling you what we take off that our CPA allows us to write off and things like that, and some of them you may not think of. But going back to the obvious, the cost of goods, right? Even if you're making a demo product or you're playing around or you're going through drafts and you're like
Mhm.
all of that, like it's not just the stuff that, oh, I made that for fun and I was testing out, because we do that a lot. We test out and like, okay, that didn't work, right? Everything, all the fabric that you're using for an Etsy shop, or fabric, whatever your cost of goods are. If it's wood, doesn't make any difference. If it's something that goes into the making of your product, from the glue to, I mean, we have glue sticks, right?
Right.
Things are, I mean, literally everything that you're purchasing from a cost of goods standpoint that goes out the door to your customer is a write-off. So that's the
Right.
obvious one.
Right.
Let's talk about a few of the not so obvious ones.
Okay. Well, another one that would be up on the top of the list is all the fees that you get charged in order to sell on a marketplace, especially since we're talking Etsy. All the fees that you get charged, the listing fees, the auto renewal fees, the credit card processing fees, the 5% that Etsy takes on your total amount of the sale of your product and the shipping costs. All those fees that Etsy charges are deductible. So you need to make sure you're watching those fees very carefully and making sure that you can deduct them. Another big thing is the equipment you use. What
Right.
kind of stuff do you use to make your items? Skip talked about the specifics in the item, but what equipment do you use to make those? Do you have a sewing machine? Do you have a drill press? Do you have tools that you use that are considered the equipment that is totally necessary to make your product? All those things are deductible when you purchase them.
Right. I mean, for instance, we have sewing machines, plural,
Plural.
and so what goes into all that? Not only is the purchase of the sewing machine, but the repair and the upkeep. When
Right.
we send
The
those off
service.
for repair, the service of those, that is an expense. If you're even just buying a can of oil at
Mm-hmm.
Joann Fabrics or something that you're going to apply yourself, obviously, I hope a lot of this stuff is obvious, but I'm trying to point out because you may go, oh, I never thought of that, right? So all those different things, like the can of air that you
Right. I was
use
just going to
to
say that.
clean out the whatever you use to clean. I hear it every once in a while.
The inside of the machine, the
Yes.
vacuum, the little vacuum, the mini vacuum cleaner that I use to clean my machines. All the pieces that you use, everything your hands touch that are required not only to make your product, but the upkeep of your equipment and the tools that you use. Those things are deductible.
Right.
So another big one for me is mileage, because I don't use the USPS pickup system. I actually drive to the post office every day, and mainly that's because I would never get my orders all done by the time the mailman comes to the door. I'm always at the last minute rushing out the door to the post office. So I drive there every day. And so I've calculated that mileage, and it's easy for me to know exactly what that number is. So I take that mileage and put it into my little spreadsheet that I do.
And that equals up to a lot.
It
Mileage
does equal a lot.
Even if like what, 5 miles?
It's a lot about seven.
7 miles
back
and forth, but 7 miles times not
the
365,
50,
but
right.
270 days a year times 50, what is it now? 56, 57 cents, something like that.
It went
I don't
down
remember
this year.
what we take
It
this
went
year,
down in 2021.
yeah, but that when you add all that up, all of a sudden that's a lot of money off of that 1099.
And then not only just to the post office, then every time I go to purchase materials and supplies, that gets added into the mileage. And purchasing supplies, equipment, but also if you would go to have a business meeting. So we meet together quite a bit. So this is a great way to go have dinner together and talk about business with your spouse, and you can write that off. Now, it really needs to be a dinner where you're talking business meetings, and we just take our receipts. I write down the things that we've talked about, actually write on that receipt so that I can have that information.
Who was there? What time was it? What day was it? Or that's on the receipt, but what did we discuss? And then we keep that receipt for our records. But this isn't necessarily something you want to abuse by going out 3 times a day and treating yourself and calling it a business lunch. But we do it quite often. And then we actually do get out of the house so that our brain is like away from the Etsy shop, and we're able to sit down and actually have a meeting. And you're fully within IRS rulings to eat a meal, write it off, and take the mileage for that. Like, for instance, we would often, like if we're going to go to Joann Fabrics and Hobby, make our run, right, to pick up our inventory. We're in a metropolitan area that has, thankfully, a lot of resources that are here for the craft that we do serve, which is sewing. And then in the middle of all that, we may stop and have dinner. Well, we're going to make sure that we have a discussion about the Etsy store and the future and the marketing plans for the week or something like that. And then we're able to then write off not only the mileage to that, but that as well. The other one, which I started with, was the she shed, right? Or your Etsy shop. You might be a he shed, depending on who's watching this, right? If you have a place that you're working and it is a dedicated space, which that's kind of one of the IRS rulings that they want to see. They want to know it's not your kitchen table that you clear off every night and you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner there as well, but in the middle of the day you're crafting your jewelry or you're making something. Technically, that doesn't qualify because it's not a dedicated space. But most of you, I'm guessing, have somewhere, even if it's a closet or a little tiny corner of a room, even if it's a corner of a room, but that corner of the room is dedicated, it is a space that you're working in. And so your space not only includes your space, but think of all the things in your space, your furniture, your chair, storage,
for all
shelving, the things that make up your space is also... you're able to write those things off as well.
All right.
So what else do we have? Oh, like apps, right? I mean, like we could just like start going here, but what software are you using? Do you use QuickBooks to keep track of your things? Do you using a software for Etsy? I know Etsy has a couple extension softwares, or companies, not Etsy themselves, but some companies have some search engine softwares and things.
There's inventory control. There's a great company called Crafty Base if you're a larger size business. Any type of software that helps you run your company, run your business, that qualifies as a deduction.
Yep, and of course Sherry has a laptop that she uses for that. So any upkeep or repairs or additional purchases. I mean, the majority of her life is Etsy right now because it's a full-time business for us. And so, most days, 100% of her work on her laptop is Etsy. But even if you're using it for fun and watching a video here and there, it's still the majority of you. You can't run your Etsy business without this tool. And that's what it boils down to. Even your phone. Like, for instance, if your main photography source is your phone, you don't talk to your CPA or whoever's doing your taxes, but there's a portion of your phone bill that you can write off by saying, I use my phone to check the Etsy stats. I have the Etsy app on my phone. I have my QuickBooks app on my phone because we use it for you can use it for mileage. You can turn on the motion detector and it'll track your mileage. Like, are you using your phone as a primary source of taking pictures, editing photos, uploading? Can you upload from your phone?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, right. Again, you're probably using your phone for the majority of the time
for marketing.
For other things, but
using it for social media.
Facebook,
if you're doing marketing for your business,
all that kind of stuff. But like I said, this is an area you want to talk to your CPA about as to how much you can take or if you can take anything. But there is a portion of that because you're using that device and it's data. Right, so as part of the plan, you may not be using it for calling your customers because you don't do that, but the data plan is there, right? And taking care of that. What else do we have on the list?
Shipping,
Right?
postage that costs.
Boxes, packaging, inserts. What's that paper? The tissue paper.
Tissue paper, packaging paper, gift wrap, all the things that go inside your package, your inserts, your thank you notes. Everything that goes into that package is an expense that you can deduct because it's part of your product. So you're packing boxes. But don't forget your shipping labels, and make sure that while you're making those deductions, notice if you got refunds or additional deductions that come from UPS, if their new verification system has caused a difference between what you paid on an Etsy shipping label and what you were actually charged, if you got credited or they added more money. So make sure that's one. But shipping is a big one. Your accountant is a deduction. If you are using an accountant, which we really suggest you do, especially if you're a full-time business and you want to make all the deductions possible, we need to pay that person.
It pays. It pays to find somebody who knows what they're doing. It pays to find somebody who understands self-employed people, not just an accountant. You don't, I mean, nothing wrong with H&R Block people and all those, the booths that pop up in the shopping centers and to have them do your taxes. Nothing wrong with them at all. I was one I worked for H&R Block for a couple of years one time. But truly finding somebody that you can tap into their mentorship and their knowledge, who is a CPA, who understands the self-employed business, will save you literally thousands of dollars. You'll pay them hundreds and you'll save thousands of dollars. So that's worth it. If you happen to use a tax software like TaxAct or what were we saying the other one? TurboTax.
TurboTax
is the other one we've used before.
And there's a great one called TaxJar, which is really good for sales tax.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that one as well. That is a paid.
So if you're using any of those to do your taxes and you're not using a CPA, which that's fine, that's your choice, that purchase, even though again, we go back to the fact that a 1099 business, you're still forwarding that into, you're doing your personal taxes with that, doesn't make any difference. You can't do it, you can't run your Etsy business without it, and so it becomes a part of your expenses.
Right. Your education. So if you have purchased courses or even like a business coaching, and you're paying for them to help you with your business and it's directly business related, those things are deductible. As well as bank fees. That was one that when we were talking about banking. So if you get charged, you're putting your supplies and materials on a credit card and it's actually taking interest.
If they're, especially if that goes an annual fee on that card, or you're paying your regular bank, even if you're using a debit card and your regular bank has a monthly bank statement fee, all those kinds of things, right? If you happen to bounce a check accidentally, the bounce fees, that's all part of doing business. It's unfortunate, but it's an expense. It really is.
All right, I think we have hit everything on our list. Just the important thing to remember is that everything your hands touch, that's kind of how I look at it.
Right.
That everything my hand touches and uses to create a product is deductible because it goes into it. If it goes into the package that goes to the customer, every single piece of that entire product.
Right.
And how it's being made, what it's used to make it. Those things are deductible, and so we can overlook some of the really tiny things, like you said about just the oil or the can of air that would clean your equipment. Just be very detailed about everything
keep
that
all your
you
receipts, even
use.
if you don't think it's viable. Keep the receipt because you may go through it a couple months from now and go, oh, wait a minute, I went to Walmart and 99% of what I bought was for groceries for the food, but I forgot I bought that spool of thread for something. So don't ever get rid of that stuff. The way I look at it is I try to ask myself, if I wasn't doing this, like if Etsy wasn't, if crafting and selling and trying to sell your craft on Etsy or wherever you're selling them wasn't a part of your life at all, then you wouldn't need those things. So in other words, if owning that shop makes you have that can of air or something, then it's a write-off, right? So anything that is in your life because of your Etsy shop can be considered as something you can deduct from that. So, but check with your CPA because We're not the authority. Don't put in your taxes and then have the IRS come back in you and you can say, well, Skip and Sherry said this. No. Go to your CPA and make sure that everything is legal for you in your situation and your state and all that. But you definitely can right off your she shed if you're using it for Etsy.
Woohoo!
All right.